Alright, time for another draft science video presentation. So, Veritasium. So, this ought to be a subject for the next 30 days, actually. 60 days. Yeah, 60. 60 videos, 61-minute videos, probably. Anyway, so as a result of a bet he made with some professor, he got $10,000 and he's using it for, I don't know what kind of prizes you get. For some contest. Of course, it has all the, well, whatever. It's just tacky. Everything this guy does is pretty tacky. And his science is crap, and he's really pretentious, and, could be a likable human. It's like Feynman, right? Could be a likable person if you didn't listen to what he was saying and pay any attention. But anyway. So this is kind of a weird subject, but it gets related to this free energy thing because the bet is over an experiment that looks sort of like free energy. But if you think about it, it's obviously not.
I am here to sign a document betting $10,000 that my last video is in fact correct.
Right, and so I offered him $2,000 where he doesn't even have to take the chance of losing any money at all. He just gets to collect $2,000 to listen to one of my arguments on physics. And so for $2,000 with no risk, he won't take that money, but he'll take this money from a dopey professor. I mean, it's, unfortunately, the professors deserve to lose. But I dislike Veritasium science more than the professor science, so there's just no way to win here. I mean, the more evil thing didn't lose, which sucks.
This is the video in question. Some people may admit...
Yeah, showboaty bullshit, but fine, whatever. We're all going to have one. No, we're not all going to have one. Is this useful? No.
But in this car, there is no motor, no batteries, no energy source besides the wind itself. And the counterintuitive claim is that this car can maintain speeds faster than the wind that's pushing it. There is a...
So, again, the wind that's pushing it is really not the right way to say it, because it's not really doing that. It's rotating wheels, and the wheels are having their rotation converted into energy to move the cart. So I suppose this is the point to get into I should just show the example that's used. So they take this idea and they convert it into a conveyor belt and then make a model of the car. And it's kind of a different idea, right? A conveyor belt isn't the same as wind, so they're using a different mechanism. But the principle. So I would argue that this analysis is probably the correct way to look at it, and I'm probably the first to point it out, so I'll just say that for the record. So let me just make it bigger. So if you think about it, right, so I've had 12 hours. I was asleep most of that time, actually, so I've actually had, 2 hours, let's say, at the most. I mean, I went for a run, this morning. I watched this video 11 o'clock last night, so, well, anyway. So for a number of minutes of an analysis, you say, well, what is this really about? Okay, and it's really about, just the idea that you have some kind of energy source, something moving, okay, and you have access to a place that's not moving. So it's like in the old days, they'd have a stream, and they put a water wheel in it, right? And so the water wheel, part of the water wheel is in the water. You get that part, right? So it's pushing on part of it, and it's not pushing on the other part. There's no water pushing the opposite way on the other part. So it's free to move. It's free to rotate. Okay, so it'll do this thing, right? And it'll make what this is hydroelectric right here, okay? We're making hydroelectric power. Now, if we took the energy from the Hoover Dam, right, and you could sort of speculate, okay, that you're making all this electricity. So you have a ton of electricity you're making from the water. And what do you do with it, right? Well, one of the answers is what you do with it is you put little wheels on your whole factory, your whole machine that has your wheel in it, and you put the whole thing on wheels. Okay, so now you're collecting energy, and then you just put the energy into the wheels and say, wheels go that way. I mean, no, sorry, go the same way no, you want to go against you're going against it. See, that's the example of the conveyor belt. See, when they do the conveyor belt example, it's a very different example, actually, because you're not going with the motion, you're going against it. So the conveyor belt's going this way, and the car goes this way. Okay, so it just seems unintuitive that you could get your little car, right, to go against the motion. That's just crazy. I mean, if I make perfect wheels and perfect everything, well, the best I could hope for is for it to stay in one place. But I know it's just going to end up getting shot that way because there's always going to be friction, and friction's going to push this thing this way, and so it's never going to be able to stay on the conveyor belt. But the catch is, by creating this other mechanism, all they're doing really is they're saying, I'm going to use the air as a foundation for, it's like the paddle wheel wouldn't work if it wasn't nailed down to the ground, right? If you didn't have some friction to a non-moving source, the whole paddle wheel and machine would just push this way, right? So if it was in space, if I had the paddle wheel in space with the building, I'd end up just pushing it. It wouldn't rotate much. It would just go that way. Okay, so what you need is some other place to attach to. And so what the car is doing is it's just going to attach to the wind, okay, air. It's going to use air by putting a little propeller on here that's going to turn with the motion of the wheels. The propeller is going to push this way, okay, and it's going to give it energy in the same direction as the belt is moving. All right. So back to the paddle wheel, right? So you could just imagine, this is how I imagine it anyway. I'm just saying, so if I put a stream and I put a wheel on the shore and I put a wheel in the water, you could sort of understand the same thing would happen. As this pressure on this wheel would rotate the wheel, as this wheel rotates on the land, it's going to have to go this way. And so I'm going to end up making a machine that goes upstream. Now, obviously we don't make one, because there's trees in the way, there's all kinds of stuff, and the streams aren't straight, and it's not very practical, so no one ever made one because it's not very useful to move your paddle wheel factory upstream. It just doesn't do you much good. But obviously, when you look at the experiment on the conveyor belt, that's when it seems the most unintuitive. Because you're saying, hey, there's a bunch of friction in the gear here, and there's the friction in the bearing on the propeller, and there's all kinds of friction in the wheels. How can they overcome all of those liabilities and make motion forward? That's impossible. But it's a lot of energy, actually. And when you think about it, like I said, if you can hold the car with a force, your hand, like so you're holding it against gravity, you can see the wheels are really turning and you're standing motionless, you're collecting a lot of energy. So, of course, there's enough energy to go a little bit upstream. It's a ton of energy you're collecting. So all you're doing really is, in the wind example, all they're really doing is just converting, instead of using a stream of water and a paddle wheel, okay, they're just picking on a very light, very weak water. Okay, so they're using wind, right? That's an illustration of wind. All right, and doing the same experiment though. They're just sticking a paddle wheel. So they could, instead of using a propeller, they could use something that rotates the same way as the wheels. So they could use a paddle wheel instead and just stick it in the wind. All right, and the fact is that if the trick is it's hard to stick it into the wind without sticking it all the way into the water. So if you stick a water wheel into the water, well, then it won't work anymore. But there is a differential between the wind up here and the wind down here. So you can take advantage of that and still get some rotation. So it still probably would work. Anyway, I shouldn't change the subject by saying which way you convert the energy. It doesn't matter whether you're rotating something this way or you're rotating something this way. It's just about gaining the energy of the rotation and its consequence on the environment. And so that's all you're really doing then, is just using wind as a stream, and you're sticking your paddle wheel into it, all right, and obliging the energy to you know, convert your rotational energy, the wheel's energy, into energy against the stream. It's probably close enough. I mean, it's enough elements to get the idea. So that's the real cause of this. Now, they're going to say it's some sort of equation, but no, it's not some sort of equation. There's a mechanical process. And it's really just taking advantage of intuition. We have the intuition that this, this would actually work in gravity if there was some place you could go where there was a stream of gravity. See, gravity, we're collecting a lot of energy from gravity, getting constantly moved it down. The catch is there's no way to get out of the water. There's no land. There's no land you can put one of the wheels on, okay, and one of the wheels in the water. See, against gravity. So gravity's constantly raining down, and we could shoot right into it, but we can't grasp onto anything on either side. We can't make one half of the wheel sit in the gravity and the other half of the wheel not be in the gravity, so it has free to rotate. So because the gravity is pushing on both sides of the wheel, we can't rotate the wheel in gravity. But you get the idea that, well, streams aren't gravity, so streams have a bias way over here that's going to go this way, and we have no stream over here, so I have lots of energy I can collect on the other side. And it's really that simple. So it's just fooling intuition. There's lots of energy available, and you can see in the sense that the cart still goes forward on the conveyor belt. It's kind of just telling you, even though it's a piece of garbage, I mean, crappy little gear, 3D printing bullshit, plastic, blah blah blah, probably lots of waste in the machinery, and yet it still goes forward. So clearly it's yeah, it's not that impressive when you think about it. All right, so now back to the video propaganda story.
A physics professor at UCLA who got in touch to say that he thought that I was wrong, that the explanation was wrong. We went back and forth a little bit, and eventually I said, well, how about we bet 10,000?
Yeah, well, so I eventually said that to you people, and you people all ignore me. So, 2,000 free bucks. So you don't have to risk anything. So, I mean, yes, 2,000 isn't 10,000, but you're not risking anything. Zero risk, and not one of you people will take my money. With zero risk.
Dollars. I can prove it to you, this vehicle really can go downwind faster than the wind. And to my surprise, he is taking me up on the bet.
Look, no one is perfect, but you have a much lower error rate than most people in YouTube space.
Now, Professor Alex Kissing.
So we know, what is that? That doesn't even mean anything, right? It's comparing garbage to sewage. Well, what? Frankly, in my opinion, the error is in believing any of this crap they taught you, with your stupid bent. I mean, what I could just go through every one of their theories: bent space, kinetic energy, whatever, wavitons. It's all wrong. It's all doesn't make any sense. It all doesn't fit the evidence. Actually, it only fits their propaganda. And Veritasium is a propagandist. His single photon experiment. I mean, he doesn't point out that, oh, I bought this silly machine for 10 grand from a silly company, okay, that sells it to silly universities, I suppose, pretending it actually does what they claim it does when there's no evidence it actually does any of that. That it produces any such thing as a single photon.
Wanted this wager and all related discourse to be public. In fact, he suggested we get a celebrity to witness the signing. So I asked Neil deGrasse.
Oh, so this is really, this is the part where you say, oh, it's not a cabal, it's not a conspiracy. Well, it looks pretty conspiratorial when you look at this kind of crap, right? That they're all buddy network of bullshitters. We're telling this is the religion, okay? We got. They're all semi-popes. They're all running for pope, So they asked Bishop Tyson and Bishop, whatever his silly name is, Bill, the stupid idiot guy, and Sean Carroll was an irrelevancy. So anyway, so he got all these three bozos to show up, and this is the best clip out of all of that. Out of having all of them on camera, this is the best they could pull out of it. So for they probably talked about it for at least 20 minutes, you would imagine, and he has nothing. nothing interesting to pull out of that 20 minutes with these three people, which is funny.
Asked Tyson, Bill Nye, and Sean Carroll to be our witnesses, and they graciously agreed.
And Alex, I just want to say, I agree with everything you said about Veritasium. That
So is he plays the part where it's glorify? Let's glorify Veritasium. So he playing the. I mean, this isn't just, you know, this is like me playing clips and talking about how beautiful my blue eyes are. I mean, it's just so lame that he plays this clip. Oh, Veritasium does such wonderful science. Yeah, so it's not even on the subject, really. Not even close to being on the subject.
generally, I can watch it and not have to wonder, is he going to mess up? How am I
No, he's really.
Yeah, are you gonna? How can he mess up a mess? So there's no, you know, oh, he's gonna make a mess of our mess science. Oh, yeah, our bullshit, never really evidentially proven. The one we lie about all the time, talking about how we, oh yeah, Eddington proved that photons are twice as bent by gravity. Proved it with a 10% experiment. You know, an experiment where he got 10% of the quality of data he was seeking. 10%! Do they say that? No. Because they're propagandists for a fable.
I'm excited about this.
Which makes it a religion. So that's the clip he takes of deGrasse Tyson. So that's the best we get out of deGrasse Tyson. Bill Nye comes off like a complete douche because, yeah. Well, anyway, I'll wait. We can play through.
Bet, because if I am wrong, then I want to know. Like, the whole point of the channel is to get to the truth.
Oh, yeah, no, the whole point of the channel is for you to get rich, okay, and have nice stuff. And that's the whole point of the channel. It's always the point of the channel. The channel is for you and your friends to create this little network and blah, 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 blah. But I don't think you can give a fuck about the truth. Because if you did, this isn't how you do videos. You don't sell products. You don't do all of this crap. You don't taint science with a bunch of commercialism. You just say, hey, I'm trying to make a living doing science. You want to donate some money? That's the honest way to do it. But you didn't play the game honest. You played the game as a little shyster, propagandist, crook, happy physics. You know, physics for the dumbasses. Physics to hook the idiots. Not physics about physics.
That is, I think, why we're all here today, and I think, this is...
Oh, what a pile of crap. Crap, crap, crap. If you were about this science, then you'd do experiments well, not badly. You wouldn't, when you were turning up the sensitivity on the photo multiplier, when you were turning up the sensitivity, you'd say, why am I having to do that? This experiment should work without me having to amplify the photons that high. Why aren't the photons showing up? Maybe the theory's wrong. You know.
Great chance to sort of see. I'm going to summarize Alex's main points in this video, but I'll put his full presentation here.
So let me first explain what I see in the video. In the video, the vehicle is operated in a gusty wind. Initially, you have the wind speed exceeding the car speed, but then the wind speed is not constant.
So this doesn't have anything to do with the actual theory, okay, of what I mean, actually theoretic, what's actually happening, okay? Yeah, it looks like you got free energy because somehow you're making something move faster than the thing that's pushing it. But that's not really what you're doing, and it's, you know, and you can understand that's not what you're doing because you're going in the same direction as the energy. Yeah, but the catch is that unlike other circumstances, it's just a water wheel. I mean, to say that a water wheel can't make energy, it spins in the same direction that the water's moving. So how can it make more energy? I mean, isn't the most amount of energy it could make would be going the same speed as the water? And that, no, it's making energy. So obviously there's lots of energy to be gained here. It's just that it's what do you connect to collect the energy is all you're really saying. So you're just saying if I was to create a windmill, I know I can generate a whole bunch of energy. Now, why can't I just take the electricity I got from the windmill to move the windmill? That's all you're really saying, right? And you're saying, well, that should be theoretically possible. The windmill's generating a whole bunch of energy, so why shouldn't I be able to move it into the wind?
The wind speed drops, and the car moves by inertia with deceleration for a while.
So basically, Alex thinks a gust pushes the car to a high speed, and then when the wind dies, the car is going faster than the wind momentarily.
Well, this is part of the solution, okay? Is that the windmill is essentially a flywheel, okay? So it's not just a windmill, it's a big storage device. So it stores a lot of inertia, okay? So it's taking the energy of the friction for the ground, so you're creating I don't know how to say it. See, I keep wanting to go back to the conveyor belt, and you got to try to stay in the wind example. So the two ways of understanding this just fool you, in the sense that all you're really doing is saying it's really just that shore thing next to the stream. And if you just keep that as your idea and understand that all you're doing is changing which thing is moving and which thing isn't, and you'll have to be able to lock on a thing that's not moving to be able to gain energy from the thing that is moving. So it's the friction of the wheels is the source of the energy.
But it must be slowing down.
In fact, that will be my conclusion at the end of this presentation, that whenever you have velocity faster than the wind, I'll actually show you in an equation, the acceleration is negative. The second effect is that the wind in the video is measured at the height of about a meter or meter and a half, but the propeller goes to some 3 meters above the ground.
Now, due to interactions with the ground, there is a wind gradient. Wind travels slower, close to the ground, and then faster higher up. Now, Alex estimated that the wind speed of the propeller might be 10 or 15% higher.
So it's just saying, yeah, it's true. We didn't measure the wind at that height. They had little streamers, okay? And going based on which way the streamers are going, he's saying they're going faster than the wind speed because the streamer, the little piece of plastic, is going the right way. But yeah, that is a poor example.
Than at the telltale. So it's possible that the car could be moving slower than the wind at the propeller, and yet appear to be moving faster than the wind at the height of the telltale.
Now, I think that this is a small effect. However, in combination with the previous effect, it just can make this more frequent. Okay, and that concludes.
If I remember the video correctly, Derek reports that they've achieved up to 2.8 times wind speed. That feels much higher than what is possible here, unless the wind had picked up and then spontaneously sort of dropped.
Very, very good.
Right. So I mean, it does seem kind of crazy that you're going 2.8 times faster than the stream. Okay, but again, think about it. All the energy you're collecting with a water wheel, you're not asking much to sit there and be able to move the machinery faster than the water. Well, it's still saying a lot. 2.8 is a lot. But whatever.
Good question. Okay, if you're going for the record, you probably will do many attempts. You will be sampling that gusty wind over and over and over until you set the record. Right? That's how you set the record. And on one of those occasions, you will get a nice strong gust, which is 3 times the air that comes after it. Okay, and that's when you will clock the record.
Right. So he's basically saying it's a storage device. So it's taking the highs and lows and all that stuff, and you have an average. And so at any one point, you've stored energy where you had a gust, and now your average of what you've experienced is high, and what's ahead of you, the speed is slower, so you have more stored energy than you're going to be collecting energy. The area you're collecting is weaker. So therefore, compared to the collection stream for the next minute, you previously were in more wind, and so you have more momentum built out of that more wind condition. Something like that.
That's where that 2.8 factor will come in.
So what about the treadmill tests? These are conducted in still air. By moving the ground backwards...
So it's not exactly still air. So that's another technicality where you have to say, well, the conveyor belt actually is moving and it's pushing, the air, which means there's an opposite reaction of, a little bit of the opposite reaction. But that's clearly not what's happening. So it is funny that this device almost looks like the one he built. So they did copy it pretty significantly, but anyway.
You're simulating a perfectly steady tailwind, and if you hold the car stationary on the treadmill, well, that's equivalent to the car going exactly wind speed.
All right, so there's apparently more than one of these. This is a real thing. I don't know, this should have been resolvable without even having to do any experiments, because it looks like everybody's already done them.
Now, if the car can move forward on the treadmill, that shows it can accelerate faster than the wind. But Alex had multiple explanations.
So again, it doesn't make much sense to talk about a treadmill and then talk about using wind. So the treadmill is almost like a water stream. And you're saying, can I make a device that isn't grounded? So the water wheel isn't connected to the ground. So I have a water wheel spinning in a stream. but I don't connect it to the ground. So how can I make energy that way? And I really can't. Now, so what they're using as ground is air. So the air is really feeble ground. So you have to think of it this way. You're talking about what you're dipping into versus having some other place that thing doesn't exist. And so you have the two things, the not moving stuff and the moving stuff. Now, you can use thinner moving stuff, weaker. Okay, wind is weaker than water. So you're using a weaker pusher, or moving thing. But you're also using solid ground to roll on. So you just have to think of it that way. So they're just using in the treadmill example, it's more like the stream of water example. And in the real car that's being pushed by the wind, it's like you're using a very weak stream. I mean, a thin water, right? Yeah. The wheels aren't, obviously, well, yeah, it's no point in trying to explain, but it's just the difference between, there's always energy to take advantage of, and so you just have to do it. You have higher and lower margins to take advantage of. The conveyor belt clearly makes it kind of easy to take advantage of it.
Why these experiments don't actually show what they claim to show.
If you have this fluctuating speed of the treadmill, and then if a human just...
All right, so he should have, right here, he should have knew he was reaching, right? Because there's no real, as much as you'd say those experiments aren't perfect, they're good enough for you to say, yeah, there's definitely some energy pushing it forward. You can't really deny the existence of it. So he should have never made this bet, in the sense that he should be able to say, oh, yeah, that's interesting. And accept that it really happened.
Sort of steers it, it can introduce unconsciously a bias towards the desired result.
So would it be that the guy with the spork is inducing the model craft to go across the wind now and then?
So
as you pointed out, it's going downhill now and then.
Yeah, I'm 100% sure that the guy in the video doesn't do it on purpose. Okay?
Yeah.
However, if he's expecting forward drift.
Yeah, it's classic.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what, exactly. Okay, so you go.
In the absence of convincing experimental evidence, Alex turned to theoretical analyses, like one by MIT aero professor Mark Drella. But here too, he found problems. His main concern is that the equation for net force includes the difference between the speeds of the car and the wind in the denominator, which seems to imply that when traveling exactly wind speed, you should get infinite force.
Now here's the real danger. Because...
whatever. So this is just more mathematical gimmick nonsense, blah, blah, blah. You really have to understand conceptually that, again, this isn't much more complicated than just saying, again, if you have a water wheel and you connect it with a rod to a regular wheel on the ground, okay, you can understand that you can change the size of those wheels and create plenty of torque, all the torque you want in terms of, one rotation here, you can have more than one rotation, more than 1 foot of distance, well, whatever. And so, yeah, you can't stop the differential you have on the water wheel, right? The water wheel's sitting in the water's going this way. It's definitely causing the wheel to rotate. If it's rotating, it has to rotate the other wheel on the other side of the axle, and if the other wheel is on land, it has to roll forward. It has to roll in the direction that the water's going, against the direction the water's going.
If there drives very close to the wind, that difference in speed goes to 0. If it's 1/1,000,000th of a 1%, that's like a nuclear bomb exploding behind him. Then Derek is definitely in trouble, right? So we need to find something to save Derek's life here. This is serious, right?
But dividing by 0, come on, you guys. I never looked at that.
Alex performed his own analysis and found no such divide by 0 problems. In fact, he found there's no way for the cart to accelerate at or above wind speed.
The acceleration of this craft is negative. So when so it's possible to move the craft faster than the wind, but it's not possible to move it at 0 acceleration, which would be needed to maintain constant speed.
Right, and this is only true if you happen to be in a circumstance where you have no differential between the two wheels. And in this case, the two wheels are the propellers, one of the wheels on land, so to speak, and the wheel on the cart is the other propeller, is the other wheel. In a sense, by connecting the one axle to the propeller, they're really just connecting another wheel to the wheel, and this wheel can ride on a medium. So again, the wind, in the conveyor belt example, the air is being used like road, like friction. That's where the friction's coming from. That's what's allowing you to rotate on something. So you're able to move the wheel on the air.
That is basically where we left it.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Thank you very much.
Guys.
Okay, so we never heard anything from Sean Carroll, and we barely heard from Bill Nye on the subject. So that's the best he could do. Out of those characters, that's the best clip he got out of it.
Thanks, Dave. So now it was up to me to convince Professor Kosenko that Blackbird really can go faster than the wind. But his presentation was effective. After the meeting, Bill Nye emailed me to say, "I'm pretty sure that the inventors of Blackbird are fooling themselves or us or both." And I was not thinking critically when I watched your video.
So that's pretty funny, right? So he's really embarrassing Bill Nye pretty heavily here. So, hey, Bill, I want to really make fun of you. Okay, and so he's like, I guess I can read more of this. As my parents often pointed out, common sense is not especially common. If this scheme worked, every sailor in the world would be, pun very much intended, on board. Yeah, the problem is the sailors, again, the problem is you don't have any great differential between your surfaces, water and air. Anyway, all the equations and several changes in nomenclature from one paper to the next are of interest, of course. I love me some physics, sync my kooky for, I don't know, cousins, veg, and actuator discs. Watching the model again, it probably is going downhill on the treadmill just long enough for the video to be compelling. So he's saying it's a gimmick. Even though the video, right? I mean, I noticed just watching the video, they do have a level right on the treadmill, demonstrating it's not, crooked. I had not seen the paper Alex referenced, but you can't divide by 0. Leastwise not without difficulty. Okay, anyway. So Bill Nye takes a hit here. Pretty substantial one, right? Because now he's switching sides.
If this scheme worked, every sailor in the world would be, pun very much intended, on board. When I posted about it on Twitter, Alice Zhang, who runs Chinese Veritasium, said, "I think you lost, Derek. I'm 80% on Alex's side now."
So he's taking a shot at his own, some Chinese Veritasium. So some guy who mimics him in China? I don't know. It's just too depressing.
What's amazing to me is that neither one of them had seen my attempts to replicate the treadmill experiments. For the first video, I asked my friend and YouTube maker Zyla Foxland to make a model downwind cart. Oh no! Version 1 ended in failure, but Zyla was undeterred, coming back in a couple days with version 2. Is it feeling like it's gonna... Unlike these models, most of her projects actually work. She is determined. So maybe this tells us something about whether you can actually go faster than the wind downwind. What was clear to me is that I didn't do a good enough job in the first video explaining how Blackbird works and providing convincing evidence that it can really go faster than the wind in a sustained way.
Alright, yeah, so the whole point is you didn't explain that this really is just about the fact that you have to have the counter, you have to have something to counter. So again, I can't do this in gravity. Gravity's a stream, but there's no place where you can have the land, so there's no place to have the friction to be able to take advantage of the stream of gravity. There's no contrast to the stream. So the contrast to the wind is the ground. So you can take advantage of the wind because the contrast to the wind is the ground, which isn't blowing. It's not moving in the same direction as the wind.
In defense, I thought the concept was well enough established. Way back in 1969, Andrew Bauer built the first successful downwind cart, and he did it to settle a friendly wager with aero engineer Apollo Smith. The bet was inspired by a claim in a student's paper from 20 years earlier. Now, Rick Cavallaro, the builder of Blackbird, was completely unaware of all this until after he built his cart. But other analyses have been published under names like the Push Me, Pull You boat. So I didn't honestly think anyone would doubt the vehicle's operation, much less bet me $10,000. But clearly there is a need for a deeper explanation. So I want to do that now by responding...
So, I don't know, maybe that wasn't part of the context you did with this guy before the bet. So I wonder if he told the guy, hey, did you see all these references before the bet? So before the bet, he showed him the little Snoopy thing, and he showed him the video of these other guys making one of these things. Yeah, did he do that before the video? I mean, before the bet? I wonder.
to the points Alex raised. So first, let's deal with wind gradient. I mean, why didn't we measure the speed of the wind higher up? Well, the answer is because it's already been done. They mounted telltales on fishing poles.
Okay, so they mounted telltales, they're saying. So these are just little streamers. Okay. That's not really measuring the wind, is it? You get into whole relativity arguments, all kinds of crap there. So it's not really measuring the wind. You have to measure the wind, from a reference frame. The reference frame, the stationary one.
Out to the sides of the propeller and even above it. Now, although the lowest telltale flips back first, all of the telltales do eventually flip backwards, showing that every part of the vehicle is going faster than the wind. Could this be because of a big wind gust that pushed the car up to high speed and then the wind died? I don't think so. Even though I didn't have a speedometer in the car for my runs, someone on Twitter pointed out that we could use the rotation of the back wheel to determine the speed from the video footage.
It's kind of funny that they built this whole thing and they didn't put a speedometer in it. I mean, whoa. I didn't watch the original video. Yeah, So, who knows?
It shows that even after the telltale flips backwards, the car keeps accelerating. Another thing I want to point out is that if wind gradient or gusts were the reason that the car travels faster than the wind, well, you'd expect the telltale to jump around or at least not point straight back at me. But it consistently does for over 30.
So it's 12 meters per second. That's 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, 20 something miles an hour, I think. Doesn't really, so they don't have the simple little clues. Let's see, distance, it doesn't say.
30 seconds until I had to hit the brakes to avoid crashing into parked vehicles. But if that's not enough for you, when Blackbird achieved its record speed of 27.7 miles per hour...
Okay, so 27.7, that's pretty close, right? All right, so, and the wind was whatever, 10 miles an hour, I guess they're saying, because it somehow went 2.8 times faster than the wind.
A 10 mile per hour tailwind, it was still accelerating. And we know this because there were multiple GPS units in the car and wind speeds which were measured at the height of the propeller at multiple locations.
Right. So again, this isn't at all remarkable when you think of what actually is happening. Again, you have an isolated stream of energy going in a direction. You're sticking a device into it to collect it as energy, and it really doesn't matter how you store it. Right? You could store it on a flywheel, or you could store it in lots of ways. And you're just saying, I'm going to take the storage and I'm going to apply the storage to moving my whole machine in a direction. And it wouldn't matter which way you go. If you went one way, you're going to have less speed. And if you go the other way, you'll gain more speed. So, but that's all there is.
The highlighted section shows the 10-second measurement period over which the record was set. Also, in 2013, the U.S. Physics Olympiad semifinal exam asked questions about Blackbird, like, can it go faster than the wind downwind, and upwind? The solution says both modes are possible, and with sufficiently low energy loss, any speed is possible. Now, I'll admit that the evidence I showed in the first...
Any speed is possible. So that was a little bit of a trick question, I think. Because you do have to apply some friction. You can't gain too much speed, or then you're not applying any friction to the ground, so that you're losing all of your friction, and your friction is necessary to turn the propeller. The propeller can't have any torque if your wheels don't have any friction. So the faster you're going, the less friction there is with the surface, therefore the less torque there can be in your propeller, and you start to lose your capacity to generate electricity. Just like your water wheel starts hitting, in a way, less water, the faster you force it to go into the water, it can't go any faster as a spinning wheel and actually collect any energy. You'll break the wooden wheel, so you have to make your wheel out of tungsten or something, and then you have to start, it gets a little more complicated. So I think saying any speed is possible is such bad physics terminology, right? But we know it's not going to be the speed of light.
First video was not definitive. Wind gusts or gradients could have explained the observations. But now that you've seen this evidence, are you convinced that Blackbird can go downwind faster than the wind without slowing down? Well, Professor Kosenko was not convinced. So,
all right, I disagree. How shall we proceed? I am expected to produce a critique of critiques of critiques, or should I take it to a more scientific direction, right? So that would be math, such as a physics paper to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. Oh, interesting. So the guy really did stick his whatever, and he got it circumcised.
I want to explain how the car works so clearly that no one, not even the professor, can doubt what's going on.
So he's not going to explain how it works. So I'm just saying that I think my explanation is so much better.
The first thing to know is that the propeller doesn't...
And that's because he's a science communicator. He's such a brilliant science communicator. He's doing it so well. But no, he's not gonna communicate the concept at all. The concept is you're taking energy from one stream and you're applying it to another place where you can actually push. So again, it's like, I think the example of one wheel in the water, one wheel on the land is a good enough example. And that you'd have every expectation that, yes, any rotation caused by the water has to cause a rotation on the wheel on the land, and therefore you start moving, in the opposite direction of the water.
It doesn't work like most people think. It's not working like a windmill. It doesn't turn the way the tailwind is pushing it. Instead, it turns in the opposite direction, working like a fan to push air backwards. This fan is powered by the wheels, which are connected to the propeller by a bike chain. So at wind speed, the car can keep accelerating because the wheels turn the fan, which blows air back, generating forward thrust. Now the big...
Right, yes, but the big question is how do you gain enough friction with the surface to create enough torque to turn the propeller? And obviously there's enough energy to be gained that you don't have to do it very well, frankly. You don't have to over-engineer the device to make it happen. And again, you probably could actually make a mechanical water wheel, a factory, a little dynamo, a generator that would move upstream. But what use would it be? Because it wouldn't be gaining enough energy to be of any real use.
Question is, to drive the fan, there must be a backwards force on the wheels, which tends to slow them down. So why isn't this force bigger than the thrust from the propeller, causing the car to slow down overall? Well, the answer is the wheels are going so much faster over the ground than the propeller is moving through the air, so the thrust force can actually be larger. I'm going to do an analysis.
Okay, so levers can't create energy. They can only transfer energy, transform it. So you can change something heavy into something fast into something slow that's heavy. So you can do that inversion, like I pointed out with momentum. You can do the conversion that regular objects can't do in regular space. They can't make a big thing going slow, can't make little things go fast. But with a lever, they can.
In the frame of reference of the car. And the important equation to know is power equals force times velocity. So at the wheels, power is input into the system by the ground moving underneath the car. The power generated is the force of the ground on the wheels times the velocity of the car. At the propeller, work is done on the air as the propeller pushes it backwards. The power out equals the force of the prop on the air times the speed of the car minus the speed of the wind. The prop is going slower through the air due to the tailwind. And if we assume no losses, then the power in at the wheels equals the power out at the propeller. From this equation, we can see that the force at the propeller will be greater than the force at the wheels.
Right, so he's saying it's going with the wind, the propeller spinning in the opposite direction, which is, so the helping wind, the wind coming at the propeller, and the propeller's going the opposite way of the wind. So it's like having a fan pointed at a fan. A fan pointed at a fan. Well, anyway, the idea is you're making the propeller more capable of creating force because you have wind blowing against it. Okay, so you're turning a turbine into a wind. That's going to create more of a differential in the force. So you're amplified the force by, you didn't really amplify it, by converting the rotational energy into the rotational energy of the propeller. You're taking advantage of the fact that essentially it's like putting a screw on the wheel and having it screw into the earth. Okay, so you're rotating one wheel with the water, and you're rotating the other wheel into a screw that screws into the earth. So you're saying, yes, it'll keep plowing that way. As this wheel turns this way, it'll dig into the earth that way. And so it's digging into the tailwind, which is really a pushing wind, which is in the opposite direction of the force you're applying with the propeller.
And since the propeller is pushing air back, the air applies an equal and opposite force forward on the prop. This is the thrust force, which will be greater than the backwards force on the wheels.
Right, but it's only greater than because there's a helping wind that you're doubling it with. So, you didn't have the helping winds going this way. So it amplifies this opposite reaction, because the opposite reaction is to both things. Not only what the propeller is pushing this way, that way, but the counter force it's pushing against. So it's pushing against the helping wind, okay? And so that makes its vector longer, and then you take that whole vector and flip it over there. That way, I think, would have been a better way to illustrate it.
So,
communicate it.
This car works like a lever or a pulley. By applying a small force to the wheels over a larger distance, the propeller can apply a larger force over a smaller distance. This is just like when you're riding a bike going uphill.
Okay, it's not a larger force, so that's just wrong. Okay, you're just saying it's a velocity. And, so again, he's playing this distance arguments, and distance arguments are just velocity arguments.
You move the pedals fast, but with smaller force, to make the wheels move slower over the ground.
Right, but you don't gain any extra energy to do that. And so again, you're still not explaining why you're able to create the energy. And obviously the reason is because we are intuitively not realizing that there's a whole bunch of energy to be collected, because the wind is a stream, and it is a stream we don't have to stand in. So we can stick something into the wind that's mounted on the ground. So there's a differential between the motion, and therefore you can collect a lot of energy, and collecting that energy, you can use that energy to move your collection device. I mean, it's,
the bigger force. But now we've run into the divide by zero problem that Professor Kosenko warned us about. When the speed of the car is exactly equal to the speed of the wind, it seems like the propeller can provide infinite force. That can't be right, can it? I mean, is our analysis flawed? And the answer is no, for two reasons. First of all, this is exactly what you'd expect, theoretically, with any lever or pulley. If one arm of the lever is zero, then you can lift an infinite weight with any amount of force on the other side. The catch is, its displacement will be zero.
You're not lifting at any distance. So, yes, that's kind of silly. I mean, it's kind of silly to say I can lift any amount of weight as long as I don't have to lift it any height. That's just silly.
Second of all, in practice, there is a propeller efficiency term that is ill-defined when the propeller is not moving through the air.
There's a better formula for the prop efficiency, which is well-defined in the zero speed limit. It makes an algebraic mess, but it's perfectly well-defined.
And then the divide by zero problem is eliminated.
Blah, 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 right to that kind of crap. Again, it's only an illusion that this is a free energy problem, or a conservation of energy problem, because, again, we're stuck trying to figure out, recognize the difference between, you have to nail yourself to some, not that. Again, if we could find a place where there's no gravity, then we could take advantage of gravity. I mean, if you could stand next to a stream of gravity, then it would be really easy to collect energy out of the gravity and move in an opposite direction of the gravity.
Equation makes the problem look more complicated than it actually is. You don't actually need aerodynamics. Here I have a little cart with a big wheel that rolls on two smaller spools. And what I'm going to show is that when you have two media moving relative to one another, well then if this car is in contact with both media, it can actually move faster than their relative velocity. So as I push the board to the right, you can see that...
See, there's no relative velocity. So again, he's just using this pushing force as essentially the stream. The ground is providing you friction to roll on, okay? And so you're just converting, this is a lever. You're converting big wheel into small rotation. So one rotation of the big wheel is 3 rotations of the small wheel. Blah, blah, blah.
The car goes down the board faster than the board is moving. If you look carefully, you'll see that the big wheel isn't turning the way that the board is pushing it. It's actually rotating in the opposite direction. That's just like the propeller on Blackbird, which pushes back against the air, and that's how it's able to go faster than the wind downwind.
Again, and it should, just because, yeah, it's collecting lots of energies. I mean, the propeller isn't, the wheels are.
Now you can build one of these cars for yourself at home, or you can build a model downwind cart. I told you Zyla was determined. Yep, I'm gonna make the claim on camera. I think it's gonna work this time. We're changing the propeller.
It has to work before we get kicked out of the Treadmill store.
These are 2 different videos, right? Treadmill store. The other image has some other background. Well, anyway. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just distracted by the fact that they did the experiments in two different places. Anyway, so this is the cart. So pretty much you duplicate the other ones. You're just saying to yourself, wow, this is so inefficient. I mean, you got bearings on the wheels, the axle, and then you're converting it into the rotation of this propeller. Lots of waste. How could this possibly work? Blah, 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 blah. But when you think about it, of course it should work. All right, so it wasn't until she dropped the front wheels down that the propeller starts to turn. So the propeller's just geared directly into the wheel's rotation. And so what essentially she's doing is she's grounding the object. So the object's not connected to ground while she's holding it, it's connected to ground. She can create the rotation. This thing stays where it's supposed to stay, blah, 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 blah. And it's this ground, it's connected to the ground that it needs, okay, for there to be something to push against, so to speak. No, I don't want to say the push against thing. But you sort of have to, because yes, without the friction, there can't be any rotation.
Does it work? It totally works.
Amazing.
So now, why wouldn't they just tie a string, to the cart? Just tie a string to the front of the thing, to the front of the cart, and just see if the cart can move against the spring. I mean, and why not just put a guide wire here so it can't drift? I mean, why didn't they do the things that would just make this so much more convincing than to have it touched by humans?
Oh my god, it's so good.
Her fourth version.
So here's another, yeah, see, this is like in somebody's garage here. Okay, so, whatever.
Of the cart works spectacularly, and it was designed to be replicated by anyone using just a 3D printer and a simple list of materials.
Oh yeah, just use a 3D printer. We all got one of those. I mean, no, you don't need a 3D printer. Obviously, it's a little crappy gear. It's a bunch of little, aluminum tubing. Not that hard to do, right? 3D printer.
She explains how to build it with more details on the engineering process on a video over on her channel. So.
Oh duh, yeah, like it's really that complicated? No, really isn't. So what else is there to say? But yeah, obviously the wheels are made to get a good adhesion, because it's the adhesion with the wheels. It's the only thing that makes the propeller turn, and blah, 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 blah.
Go check it out. Now, Professor Kosenko has now conceded the bet, and he transferred $10,000 to me. So I want to thank him for being a man of honor and changing his mind in light of the evidence I presented, which is...
Really? Yeah, I know, but it's still a gimmick. Yeah, in the sense that it started with the wrong premise that that you shouldn't be able to somehow collect energy from the wind, when of course you should be able to collect energy from the wind. So of course you should be able to move. Of course you should be able to move.
Really not easy to do, especially in a public debate like this one. Now, I do not want to keep the money. I want to invest it in science communications.
Right, this is just more baby talk for I want to use it to capitalize on it. Okay, so I make myself look really cool. I get to generate noise and talk about me and blah, 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 and I'll get more than my 10,000 back in the end.
So I'm holding a 1-minute video competition.
Right, so this is just retarded. So 1-minute physics. So you're going to do physics in 1 minute. Good physics in 1 minute. Yeah, that's a great idea. Why didn't somebody think of that before? Wow, somebody could have sponsored that 100 years ago, and we'd be so much better off having a bunch of people do physics in 1 minute.
I'll be awarding cash prizes to the top 3 videos that explain a counterintuitive STEM concept.
With some kind of cash prize to be announced, but yeah, we don't even know what they are yet.
Some details down in the description.
Except the detail of what the cash prize is.
What I love about science is that disagreements are not problems. They are opportunities for everyone to learn something.
What do you... No. Disagreements are, Leibniz creates a new theory of energy that's preposterously inaccurate, that no experiment really defends, because he believes in solitons and monads. And for now, 300 years, you've all sit there and defended that as good physics and good science, when he was overtly saying your physics isn't religious enough. There's not enough God in it. And that's the physics you're embracing and defending. Even though you have not one real experiment demonstrating kinetic energy to be anything but a fantasy. You don't have any experiment collecting this magical extra energy from velocity.
I learned a lot more about Blackbird, aerodynamics, and gear ratios than I knew before. I also learned that
Right, so you didn't know any of this stuff, and you just do research and blah, 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 and then pretend you're an expert. Shit.
I should go into more depth in my videos. I should make the evidence overwhelmingly convincing and put in some quick...
Yeah, right. But then you'll just do what you did in your stupid photon, your single photon bullshit experiment. Okay, well, where you'll sit there and say, hey, it doesn't work when you do it the right way. Yeah, so I'll have to gimmick it up to make it work so I can keep propagandizing the bullshit.
Equations toward the end for those who want that level of detail. I want to thank everyone involved in making this video: Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, Sean.
So he talks about, the fact that he should be more detailed, and then promotes a contest where the physics is obviously going to be completely undetailed. 1-minute videos. 1 minute on something relevant to physics, you're going to say in 1 frickin' minute. I don't think so.
Carol, Mark Drella, Professor Kosenko, and Zyla Foxlin, but especially Rick Cavallaro, the inventor and creator of Blackbird. He was a fountain of information, a constant source of support, and the man leading the charge to help people understand this area of physics for the past...
Well, I don't know. I understand what area of the physics. I don't think you still don't understand it. Okay, you still think that it's surprising when theoretically there's no surprise that water wheels create energy and you can use the energy to move the water wheel.
15 years. Let's hope this video puts the issue to rest once and for all.
The issue, that's the key part.
The Blackbird craft all started with a brain teaser, and this video sponsor, Brilliant, offers you a daily...
This isn't the part I want. I want the contest part. What do you do to that? Okay, let's just jump ahead a little.
think you already understand. Just think about how much more you would understand in a year if you got into the habit of solving one novel, unexpected problem per day. And while you're at it, why not take one of Brilliant's courses, like on computer science, neural networks, or classical physics? Even physics professors can benefit from some lessons on frames of reference.
I don't think this is... He had a whole spiel about the contest on here, and now all of a sudden that's gone. Weird. Okay, so we'll go to that. I guess maybe it's another video. No, it's the... I don't know what he did to it. He took that part out. Yeah. My rebuttal. Yeah, I don't understand. Okay. Well, anyway, there's a part about the fact that I won the money, but I'm not going to keep it, and I'm going to sponsor this contest. So let's see. So there's the contest, but there's... Yeah, that's not a video. Very strange. So the video, he took the part out about the contest. I don't know. Oh, okay. Here's this: the cash prizes. The first place receiving 5,000, second place receiving 3, and third place receiving 2. Well, that wasn't a very creative distribution, and it goes based on you know, how popular the video is. So it's only 100, the top 100 most, you know, view numbers on YouTube. So no chance there, probably. But I'll make my bunch of 1-minute videos. What the hell? You can make as many as you like, so I'll make as many as I like. And just pointing out how, you know, Veritasium is just sort of bullshit. Okay, it's just, you know, it's not been very good for science. All right. So anyway, yeah. So nothing. So, you know, in a sense, I'm promoting his little contest, but the promotion is so tiny. I just thought something that was sort of tacky in here was the eligibility, where he points out you have to be subscribed to Veritasium. It's just kind of funny because what is that? What are we talking about? A few hundred people that might make these videos. You know, realistically, how many videos will be made? A few hundred. I guess he had some grander notions or something, and there'll all be people that were science focused anyway. All people who usually probably saw Veritasium videos because they are subscribed already. And it just seems like, well, why would you worry about a couple of thousand subscriptions, you know, when you have 10 million? It's just kind of, what the hell is that in there for? It's complete bullshit. Anyway, as far as I'm concerned, I can't see any other reason than bullshit to have that subscribe to Veritasium thing in there. Why should I have to be subscribed? I mean, I happen to be subscribed, but why? What would be the big deal? Oh, I'm going to enter the contest. I'll subscribe. I mean, it's just so, what is that? It's just so. It's an indication of a tackiness that, in the context of all the other bullshit that goes on, that just seems a little desperate. What a desperate thing to include. It's not like people viewing the video have to be subscribed. It's just the people who actually go to the trouble to make a 1-minute video on the subject have to be subscribed. Why would they have to be subscribed? How could that mean anything to anybody? I mean, how could it mean anything to Veritasium's total subscription numbers? How could it mean anything to anybody who views the videos? How can it mean anything to anybody? It just seems like they're so they have this subscribe so ingrained in their brains that they have to put it in everything they write. They have to put the word in there. Anyway, pathetic, I'd say. So, so this ought to be interesting, I think. So, I mean, it is related to other subjects in the sense, like I said, it has the appearance of free energy. I mean, it seems like an unequal reaction when you're going faster than the conveyor belt's moving in the opposite direction. But technically, you could argue, no, not really, because you're collecting a lot of energy in the vehicle as long as you can stop it against something, as long as you can create friction, and air is frictional. So instead of standing on the ground, instead of using the ground, you're just using the air as a ground and like collecting electricity. It's almost like you could think of it in an electrical sense. You're detecting the voltage based on your ground. And yes, the wind isn't a very good ground, but it's an easy to access one, and you can go any direction in it and all those kind of things. All right, anyway, that's for the conveyor belt again. Really, the two examples are so different. The conveyor belt's really different than the car moving in on the ground in the air is a little different. On the stationary ground with the air moving, is very different. It's they are contrastable, not really synonymous or analogistic. They don't really, they're opposite analogies in a way. Anyway, alright, enough of a video. So, till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. I have to see why it didn't play the contest thing. That is really weird. The reference to the contest is just gone. Anyway, till the next time and such.